Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. And tonight we're going to primarily be talking about the reports that are coming out primarily from Israel, but are constantly repeated around the world that the Hamas political bureau leader, Yahya Sinwar, has been assassinated. So what do we know so far? Firstly, Israel has a very rich history of lying. You're talking about a country that was based on lies, people faking their identities, creating a pseudo-history, a pseudo-narrative, and denying the truth. And when it comes to assassinations, they've had many false claims previously when it comes to Hamas in particular. Now, they've had indeed confirmed assassinations previously, including the main spiritual leader of Hamas, the late martyr Sheikh Ahmad Yassin, and many important figures in Hamas. Very recently, of course, they had the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. However, when it comes to certain figures in Hamas, Israel claimed multiple times that they assassinated them. And then Israel admitted that it wasn't true. One example is Yahya al-Dayf, Muhammad al-Dayf, excuse me. Muhammad al-Dayf is the main military commander of Izz al-Din al-Qassam brigades. Israel said that they killed him at least 5 times. They've had over 7 assassination attempts. We've had definite confirmations from them. He was killed. We assassinated him. Only for him to pop up at a later stage, sometimes months later or years later. And then Israel would say, oh, we rushed into it, establishing the fact that he was assassinated. And now we're more sure if they would declare that they assassinated him. And they've declared that they assassinated him now in this battle of Al-Aqsa flood. Again, no confirmation from Hamas that Muhammad al-Dayf was assassinated. As a matter of fact, some of them later on said he is fine, alive and well. Then we go to Yahya Sinwar. Well, they said that they killed Yahya Sinwar several months back. Don't we remember that? Okay. They said they killed Yahya Sinwar. 2 weeks ago, they started publishing reports that no, it wasn't Yahya Sinwar, because Yahya Sinwar now, we have a confirmation that he's sending messages to Hamas members abroad, some of the political bureau leaders of Hamas, some of the political figures in Hamas abroad, meaning he's not dead. Okay. What's different this time? Well, what's different this time is that we have images, we have footage. We're not going to share them here, too harsh, of a body, someone looking like Yahya Sinwar. Israel is claiming that they had certain checks to do with like teeth, DNA testing, and they're confirming that it was him. However, we don't have a confirmation from Hamas yet. So anything that Israel says is invalid until Hamas says so. Why? Because firstly, Israel, you're talking about a hyper-pathological lying entity. That doesn't mean they can say truthful things. Sometimes they can. That doesn't mean they don't have the capability to assassinate Yahya Sinwar. They do. They've reached Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. And by the way, when it comes to the figure of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah himself, you're talking about a figure that is very important when it comes to Hezbollah and when it comes to the global support for the resistance supporters and the people seeking liberty and freedom. And they confirmed, Hezbollah, that he was assassinated. However, they had failed assassination attempts in Lebanon, and although they said they killed other figures, they did not. We had a confirmation that they did not kill them. So long as we don't have a confirmation from Hamas that Yahya Sinwar was killed, we cannot assume that he was indeed killed. Again, because the movement needs to confirm, and we cannot trust the genocide entity. We cannot trust these hyper-pathological liars. Secondly, let's assume he was killed. Let's assume the narration of Israel is true and Yahya Sinwar was assassinated. Well, firstly, is there a more heroic and noble death than a death of a leader in the front lines fighting the most depraved enemy on earth? That's a question. Then, would his assassination change anything when it comes to the equation of resistance against Israel? Well, the history says no. What does the history say? The history says the resistance will increase and become more intense, and you will have more people, and you will get more leaders of the resistance more keen on getting rid of this genocidal entity that poses a stamp of shame and horror on humanity. So they've assassinated senior figures before. Nothing changed, when it comes to the resistance. They've improved. They got stronger. They got more support. They got cleverer. They got more intense. They got more weapons. And they escalated their resistance to this criminal child murdering entity. Then we have questions. What are the questions? Firstly, if they, again, assuming the situation is true, and for anyone joining us as and when, we're still saying that it's a claim from Israel, Hamas hasn't confirmed yet, so it should be taken with a pinch of salt. Now, let's say Israel published this. Firstly, you have capabilities to false information, fake information, even fake bodies and faces. We all know that this technology exists, capabilities exist. But would it be something that Yahya Sinwar, the political bureau leader of Hamas, necessarily be doing? Fighting Israel over the ground? Does Hamas need that? Technically, they don't. And also, when you are the political bureau leader, you don't have to engage in such activities. You have duties to lead, you have duties to manage, you have duties to communicate internally and externally, and you have many responsibilities, not necessarily to go out and fight, because there's more than enough people willing to fight and waiting for their turn to fight. Confirmed by Israel. Israel the other day claimed that the Hamas forces in Gaza, that's troops from the ground, say that Hamas have the same capacity in terms of, firstly, they had a report before that saying Hamas has the same levels of fighters as before. Then that report said that soldiers on the ground say that Hamas are fighting them with the same intensity and same keenness and same bravery as they did on day one. What does that tell you? Well, that says that even if you will assassinate Sinwar, they still have that capacity. And if Hezbollah in Lebanon have so much capacity to continue and intensify after the assassination of their Secretary General, who has been a Secretary General for over 30 years. Yahya Sinwar has been leading Hamas for much less than that. Then what would that change? That would change nothing. Another question. Why did Israel report or make this claim now? Well, we have a storm. We have a global storm against these criminals. Italy is banning arms exports, increasing feud with France. And you have to talk about traditional allies that are, many of them have leaders who are despicable, by the way. And it says a lot when you have leaders who generally take hideous stances when it comes to their own population and global matters, taking such a stance with Israel. It shows you how evil and ugly Israel is. If disgusting leaders start to take these positions against Israel, that means they're super ugly and disgusting, right? And they can live in as much denial as they want. It's not going to change anything. So they again want to come up with this report to say what? That look, our killing, mass killing and mass destruction is bringing results. Therefore implying what? That our genocide and mass murder is justified. All of this destruction led to the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, meaning this is the message that Israel wants to convey to the world. We have a right to do what we do. Why? Because look, okay, we killed 50,000 people. We were committing a genocide and an infanticide, mass destruction, hospitals, universities, schools, killing people in shelters and tents, burning them to death, raping women, kidnapping children. But, we reach Sinwar eventually. So they want to send a message to the world that all means are justified in this war. And Netanyahu has the audacity now to send a message to the people in Gaza, saying to the people of Gaza, to the people of the region, you need to know that this is good for you and you need to be on the side of the blessing and not the curse. He has the audacity to send the message to the people of Gaza. I mean, did he give them something that would be considered positive at any point? He's starving the people in the north to death. All right. So they're trying to portray it as an image of victory. This is another thing here. Why they do these things and why they continuously focus on targeting certain figures, assuming again that it's true. We haven't had a confirmation from Hamas yet. Why? Because they are a death cult. They thrive on these death trophies. They like having death trophies to show their people as if this is a trophy of success. Why? To cover up their military failure and humiliation. That's why they cause a genocide against the people, mass destruction. And then when and if they reach a certain top figure in the resistance, they will show it as, look, here's a trophy for you. My bloodthirsty supporters, look. Did it stop anything? That is the question. Again, we were going to have the same questions like we had after the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. Will it change anything in the equation of fighting Israel? It will not. Are the people, or will the people, who lost all of their loved ones, who lost their husbands, wives, children, whole families wiped off, will all of these people who suffered so much in Gaza be affected to that level if Yahya Sinwar was assassinated? In many cases, no. Some people, if they like him very much, they might feel like really hurt or whatever. But when you've lost your children, when you've lost your wife, your sister, your brother, when you've witnessed all of this horror, your children burning in front of you, I mean, what else is there? Yahya Sinwar dying? That's not going to make a massive change, is it? Plus, they know that the same people who would, if they did, assassinate Yahya Sinwar, well, they're the same people who assassinated my family members. So are they going to tell me that I am safer now after they caused all of destruction against me and my people if the leader of the movement resisting them the most in Palestine has been killed? Are they going to really think that? Of course not. They're not going to think that. They are going to still view Israel in the same way that they viewed Israel all of their life. A terrorist occupying apartheid supremacist state supported by the genocide cartel. The genocide cartel, some in the Western establishment, some in the Arab world as well. Don't underestimate the evil that the Arab world has. And some people in Palestine, what are we talking about? Do you think like all Palestinians are like, no. Some people, the Zionist bootlicking side would be happy, like they were happy when Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was assassinated. Why? Because to them, Israel is killing the people who compete with them. So let's not underestimate anything here. This situation is bigger than Palestine. It's bigger than the Palestinian people as well. However, it was written for them, and it was the destiny of the Palestinian people to be at the forefront of this project of supremacy and neo-colonialism in Palestine. What is going to happen after this? And I'll open the space up for any questions, by the way, and comments in a second. What is going to happen after this? Okay, firstly, we need a confirmation from Hamas. So long as Hamas does not have a confirmation, we cannot believe that Israel actually killed Yahya Sinwar, even if they have image and footage of his body. Why? Because Hamas are truthful, and Israel lies more than it breathes. Israelis are hyper-pathological liars. They've established their existence on lies. They still do on lies. They live and thrive on manipulation, propaganda, and hiding the truth. So they're not a state that can be trusted when it comes to giving certain information. And we have a history of their lies. Their lies have been exposed to the whole world. On the other hand, we have a history of truthfulness coming from sides like Hamas and from Hezbollah and the people opposing Israel. History, records of truth and honesty when it comes from these people. So we need to wait and see what Hamas says. What will this change when it comes to the equation? So we spoke about why Israel now claimed this and published this report to show the whole world that's arming up against them. Listen, not just France, not just Italy, not just other countries. Joseph Borrell from the United Nations, do you know what he said? He said Israel is waging a multi-front war on the UN. Do you know what that means? That's borderline legitimizing war against them. Right? Israel is waging a war on the United Nations. So what's next if Israel is waging a war on the United Nations? That means that war on this entity is justified. And again, that's something that it's like, what are you waiting for? Western countries, what are you waiting for? Right? You've always told us that you are the beacons of democracy and human rights, and all of a sudden you freeze when it comes to Israel. Why is that? There should have been military action taken to take down this genocidal regime in Israel from a long time ago, before the 7th of October. But now you have more reasons to take action against them. Don't forget, you're talking about countries that created fake stuff, made stuff up, false flags as well, to have military intervention in countries. Yet when there's something true, when there's something genuine, they freeze. Again, Palestine was always the moral compass of your true intentions and positions when it comes to the international scene politically. And now, everyone is freezing. So the resistance will not be effective. Again, Israel said that in a way, and at a time where it was receiving more and more scrutiny. And of course, this comes up to cover up, again, their genocide against the people, to show as if it's justified. Burning children in tents, justified. 17,000 children, justified. Thousands of infants under the age of 1, murdering them, slaughtering them, justified. All of that is justified because we want to kill Yahya Sinwar. This is the message I'm trying to say. What will happen to the resistance? The resistance is going to continue getting stronger. It's not going to take one step back. Why? Because the people who put themselves in a position at the forefront to fight this child murdering entity always knew they are at the risk of dying. As a matter of fact, Yahya Sinwar himself said, I wish I would be martyred. I'd rather be martyred by an F-16 than die from COVID during COVID times, or die on my bed. So these people know that they're putting their lives at risk. And when they do lose their life fighting or leading the resistance against Israel, that's a badge of honor for them. So it doesn't really matter. And all of the people resisting Israel, most of them are people of faith, people of honor, people with values, who put themselves at the forefront. Unlike who? Unlike their enemies, unlike Netanyahu, unlike his son, getting protection in the United States, instead of coming and serving in Israel when they are in urgent need for people to go and die as cannon fodder for this genocidal death cult. His son is in the United States. What is he doing there? So the resistance will continue. It will get stronger. If the death of Sinwar has been confirmed, that will not change anything. It will probably make things even worse. Why? Because if you don't have any, firstly, you assassinated Haniya, the only person who, or one of the people who you could have an agreement with, after Hamas accepted the ceasefire, that was proposed by the United States, and that was in accordance to a UN resolution. Netanyahu refused. You went and killed him. So you killed the negotiator and the man who you could have had peace with. Okay. Sinwar wasn't really talking with Israel because he knew what was happening, but he was leading the movement. Now, is there anyone to talk to at all? Do you understand? What does that show? That shows that these people don't want to talk. They don't want to talk. They don't want to reach a solution. And they're backed by that fully by the mother of all genocide regimes in the whole world, the United States administration. They're justifying Israel's assassinations. Talking, we need to get aid to Gaza and we have 30 days and all garbage, all theater, because they're supporting them with what they need. The missiles and everything that they need. So it will continue whether they assassinated Yahya Sinwar or not. And we are looking at a further escalation. Why further escalation? Because so far, we have only seen a pattern of increase. We haven't seen any patterns of de-escalation. The only things we've seen so far are a continuation of the resistance against Israel, Israel increasing its assassinations, and whenever we have any sort of potential to reach a ceasefire, we would have Israel coming and making things worse. Making things worse how? By, assassinating people, by Netanyahu throwing sticks in wheels when it comes to the negotiations so that they do not have any deal. And that's fully backed by the United States. So everyone can really say goodbye to any potential of a ceasefire now. Whether it leads to an escalation that will be regional or an escalation that would be global. And the people who supported and legitimized Israel, they have no one to blame but themselves, because they enabled this monster. They are feeding still this monster. And this monster will end up consuming them if they continue feeding it and supporting it. Now is the time everyone in the world, all governmental level, politically, people, everyone completely ditches Israel for good, boycotting the state, completely cutting every ties, withdrawing any legitimacy. You need to strip Israel of any legitimacy as an entity. They don't have a right to exist as they are and as they have been. And take military action to take them down. So long as you don't do that, you are enabling a state of mass terror and genocide that will reach everywhere it wants across the world. And this is what I wanted to share with you in this live stream. Again, thank you so much for everyone who joined me from the beginning and are just joining now. Thank you so much for everyone who sent supers earlier, Sour Vodka, The Virus, and Kevin. Kevin, thank you so much. Said great work. Mahmoud, thank you so much, my friend. Let's see if you have any questions. Mahib is saying, Salam Mahmoud, what are your thoughts on US bombing Yemen? What impacts has it had on the Houthis and the general public? Well, the United States and the United Kingdom bombing Yemen show you who the United States is run by and who the United Kingdom is run by. A genocide entity, a genocide cartel. Why? Because they are going and bombing the country that is one of the countries who are taking action against a country committing a genocide as confirmed by the ICJ, run by war criminals. It shows you where they stand. That's number one. Number two, well, Yemen has been attacked for years now with the support and blessings of the United States and the United Kingdom and other countries too. Did that hurt their capabilities? It did not. It made them stronger. Then, what is the bombing going to do now? Well, what has the bombing done before? You're talking about, listen, geographically it's very difficult. It's like Afghanistan almost. Mountainous areas, people can hide under the mountains. It's really difficult to go and occupy Yemen or make a significant change. They will hide everything under the mountains, in the valleys. The geography of Yemen does not help anyone try and do anything significant against them. You can target the oil, you can cause fires and bomb, burn money, with your bomb, burn taxpayers' money in Yemen. This is what they're effectively doing. Burning taxpayers' money by using bombs that they paid the military-industrial complex for, instead of investing that money on people who actually need it in their own countries. War economy meant to feed and enrich the greedy, corrupt elite and disregard the population, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in the United Kingdom, or across Europe in any country that is a puppet of the United States administration. So if we look at the pattern previously, we haven't had any impact, and now we don't have any impact. As a matter of fact, you had Ansarullah leaders now saying that, well, it's not going to stop us from doing anything. We're going to continue. They have been attacking them for a year now. The world's largest superpower, by its little poodle, with its little poodle, have been attacking Yemen for a year now. Has that made any change? It hasn't made any change. And again, instead of these establishments or anyone sane, if there's anyone sane in them, having a review on their abhorrent history and correcting stuff, they continue being in denial and trying to whitewash crime and depravity committed by the Zionist genocidal cartel. It's not going to work. Plus, these people, they have nothing to lose. They're not afraid to sacrifice. And their capabilities are very well hidden. They are very organized. And we have only seen them getting stronger. Backed by what? Backed by just causes, backed by the truth. That's the difference as well. Their enemies are attacking them based on falsehoods, greed, and a very high level of evil and supremacy against them and against the whole region. Because think about it. Israel is one of the biggest causes, if not the biggest cause of instability in the region. Supported by who? By countries with a massive, rich history of colonialism and enslavement and mass killing across the world. What does that mean? that a foreign enterprise that was planted there is causing all of this disaster and destruction. And all of the people in the region want is for those forces who are planted there to get the hell out. Simple. Because they didn't come as people, who want to live with the population. No, they came as people who want to impose their will. Typical colonialism, arrogant mentality that still exists heavily. But that's not going to work. It's on its way to end. We are witnessing a very important moment in history that will shift the way the world is run. We are seeing the rise of a multipolar world, but typical to how it was in very many moments in history. Whenever you had the top leading empire on its way to collapse or on its way to start losing, they would do everything in their possession to prevent that. And in many cases, that would also be through mass killings and destruction and many wars. Bujar, Mahmoud, have been surprised by usurpators such as Mahdi Hassan putting sticks in the wheels of president's candidates that would change the US and UK policy in favor of Palestine. I think we spoke about that the other time. Listen, everyone who reads or views things or listens to anyone should be careful of what they listen to and read, and also measure who's talking, look at their pattern, and look where they stand in the most difficult moments. In the most difficult moments, look where they stand. In the moments of crucial change, look where they stand. Because what do some people do in general? They would give you things that you like, so they would talk the talk. We support these rights and we support this and reformation and criticizing government and right, to gain popularity and to gain a sort of justification. But whenever there is a moment, a genuine moment to come and change the thing that these people claim to criticize, they backtrack. Who do they serve? Just ask yourself that question. Who do they serve? Jennifer is saying Sinwar was allegedly carrying a passport belonging to an UNRWA teacher. Sadly, if true, UNRWA will be further demonized. That's Israel for you. Sinwar carrying a passport of an UNRWA teacher. Could this circus get any worse? Could this horror circus get any worse? Have we not realized that you're talking about people who constantly lie? They're massive liars. And again, we need to clarify, we need to establish what happened from Hamas. And also, even if you see footage, even if you see videos, even if you see certain things, that's not necessarily the accurate truth of what happened. Many things can be faked, many things can be staged. So we cannot base our belief and understanding only based on what we see and hear, especially from a country committing a genocide. This information is coming from a genocidal entity. And we need to hear if Hamas confirms. And also, we need to also scrutinize how Hamas confirms this. Again, why am I saying this? Not to say that Israel is incapable. No, they are capable of assassinating many people. They've reached top figures. And they still do to this day. They are able to. But there are problems with the report itself, like we spoke before, with the Hamas confirmation. We need to check also how is Hamas getting this confirmation exactly? And who's going to declare it to us, Hamas from Gaza or Hamas outside? So everything needs to be clarified further. The situation in Gaza is a very complicated situation. But what we do know for sure is that Israel is a lying state. I think that's something that everyone should establish by now. Bujar is saying, Mahmoud, Iran recently said they have a secret weapon more powerful than an atomic bomb, and they have already used it in the past. What could it be? I haven't really heard that, but I know that Iran has the capacity to hurt Israel if they attack them. That is guaranteed. Whether they do or they do not have an atomic bomb, firstly, they openly declare they don't. They have what they call a fatwa that prevents them from having an atomic bomb, that many people in power now, people in the parliament, are asking to revise. They said when they were warned that they will be attacked by a nuclear bomb if they attack Israel, or if they respond to the assassination of Haniya, that we will respond with the same manner if that happens. And they responded now to the assassination of Haniya, and they weren't nuked. That's not to say that they will not be nuked in the future. However, if they said we have the capacity to return with the same power, or we can do likewise to you, what do they mean exactly? That they have a secret atomic bomb, or will they have the option to use it? Will it be handed to them in the right moment? What is it exactly? Now, that doesn't just rely on Iran, remember that. That relies on countries who have nuclear bombs, and combined they have way more nukes than the United States does. In the cases of Russia, China, and North Korea. So you're talking about a situation where Iran, whether they do or they don't have nuclear bombs, they have very high capabilities when it comes to their army, and they can hurt Israel and the United States very badly. And Angela, thank you so much for that. And Bujar, we took that as well. And Elvira, thank you so much for your super, much appreciated. And Mr. Y is saying, any thoughts on US giving Israel 30 days to boost Gaza or cut military support? It's all theater. The United States is having a theater with Israel. They want to show as if they are opposing Israel in certain cases, and that they are not the same with Israel, when really and truly Israel is the United States and the United States is Israel. Now, we've also had reports coming from Israel that, well, the United States told us before that even if they do these claims, they will still give us the weapons that we need. What does that tell you? That tells you that the United States is having a theater. They previously said, we're going to stop the heavy bombs that are used to commit a genocide against the Gazan population. Then they later went to give them those weapons. Those weapons were used against civilians. We heard about certain ultimatums. We heard about Joe Biden having these tough discussions with Netanyahu. All of that meant nothing. All is just a show. The United States administration stands fully with the Israeli regime, and it's a United States plan as much as it is an Israeli plan to commit what they're committing in the region. Why? Because the United States has a plan to control all of the resources in the Middle East, and they had a new Middle East map as well in plan before the invasion of Iraq that reached countries that it hasn't reached yet, including Iran. And there are many warmongers in the US calling for an attack on Iran. Don't forget that. So it's all a show. We don't believe it. The United States is more responsible than Israel in this because they are enabling them and supporting them with whatever they need. Zain Ahmed saying, I think that those Zionist regime will be crying about multiple front war and their losses in the next 2 days. Could be. We could have surprises at any moment now. Why? Because I think the sides opposing Israel have reached a realization that Israel and the United States are on a maximalist campaign in the region to take control against the population's will, supported by Arab dictatorships in certain locations. And they're not going to stop there, because what's going to happen next is going to create an equation. The equation that Israel and the United States are trying to establish is the equation of superiority for Israel and its supporting countries, primarily the US and its proxies. And if they establish that, and if they succeed, it would be a very big blow to the populations of the region. However, that doesn't appear to be what's happening. From what's happening on the ground, all indications lead us to believe that it is Israel that is failing miserably, Israel, the country that is dying, the population who are fleeing, and by them not achieving any of their declared objectives, neither in Gaza nor in Lebanon. That tells you that you can assassinate as many leaders as you like. The resistance against you is going to continue because it's a resistance for liberty and justice and equality. And when you establish your resistance on equality, on justice, on truth, on liberty, and you continue confronting, you cannot lose. It's as if it's nature's way that you don't lose. There's no way you can lose. Look at the events in history. Look at the sacrifices of the Algerians. Look at the sacrifices of the Vietnamese. Look at the sacrifices of other nations in history. I'm just talking about recently, in the past 100 years, past century. Whenever they continued, although they suffered so much losses, millions of people were assassinated. The millions by the United States, millions by France, millions by the British Empire, millions by other countries in Europe. Millions, not one or two. When the people continued their quest for liberty and their resistance against their oppressors, they won. And it doesn't matter where they came from. And again, look at, if you look at Vietnam, these people were, everything under the sun was used against them. And what happened? They ended up victorious. Zaphod B. Bilrock. Isn't the fundamental problem that Israel cannot lose this war because in the event of imminent defeat, they would use nuclear weapons and thus bring everything down with them? I think we should neither underestimate nor overestimate the risk of nuclear weapons being used. However, what's for sure is they haven't been used yet. Well, they haven't been used ever since the United States used them. They gave the whole world an example of what they do. And they were primarily made for deterrence, not for actual use, because the country that uses them first knows that it's written its own fate and destiny by using them, because you're automatically opening that can against yourself. Now, in the event of imminent defeat, the question is, how do we describe that moment, imminent defeat? How do we say it's an imminent defeat? When I saw what happened on the 7th of October, I thought Israel ended on the day. And what I mean by ended is that it's on its way to the end, to the eternal end from that moment onwards, because they had no good escape from that. They had options that were less harmful. They had options that could have bought them more time. They had options that they could have used and potentially nurtured to the future. However, they have taken down the path of the hateful, vengeful attack and aggression against the Palestinian people by this genocide and destruction and mass-scale state-sponsored terror. But they've exposed themselves to the whole world. What have they done globally? Any sound-minding person, any person with an ounce of logic would tell you that a country like that cannot exist, mustn't exist. They still have people in power who support them, but they cannot be relevant for a very long time. Why? Because the global public opinion now of anyone who cares about the matter, because some people are, excuse me, but like, they just get on with their lives, and then they don't care about anything that happens globally. So we will put them aside. But anyone who is concerned about their fellow humans and causes of humanity and human rights and global matters, what happens on this earth, they realize that this country does not have a right to exist, and they're vocal about it, that they do not have a right to exist, that this regime should be taken down once and for all. And that is defeat. If you don't want to call it imminent as if it's tomorrow, but then again, if we talk about imminent defeat at a scale of a country ending, ceasing to exist, that was never something that happened in a day. Never. That's something that can take decades, sometimes hundreds of years to change. Don't forget that. But judging by the level the events are accelerating now, you can call it an imminent defeat in the making. Why? Because by what they're doing and by their escalation, they are inviting their own death. They're inviting their own demise. Like I said before, if there are like 20 self-destruction buttons in Israel, Netanyahu is clicking on all of them repeatedly. He went on a genocide with Gaza to expose Israel as an illegitimate, racist, supremacist, depraved entity. He took off legitimacy from the global population. He took off legitimacy officially from the majority of the countries around the world. Because don't forget, Israel only has legitimacy now because of approximately 34 countries who make up of about 17% of the global countries. But they happen to be slaves of the United States administration. They act like they have legitimacy, and they act and pretend like they are the international community. They are nothing but a small, global, greedy, supremacist elite dictating what's happening to the world. And that's also ending with the end of Israel. So they haven't used nukes so far. They considered using them. And again, it's if they've gotten away with it. But who are they going to use it against exactly? If they're going to use it on other countries, the bigger players who have nukes will look at this as the United States started using nuclear bombs, not Israel. China and Russia will see it as the United States started nuking Lebanon or Iran. Why? Because they know Israel is a United State, is part of the United States. So it would legitimize their use of nukes against countries that the United States has an alliance with. It's very sensitive, but the United States administration is reckless, completely reckless. As a matter of fact, the Western political establishment is reckless. They've proven time after time in their majority. Now things are shifting slightly, which is good. You even have people who supported Israel so much speaking up against them and embargo and what have you. But in general, any country that is a United States puppet, they have been supporting all of this and they're acting recklessly, especially by their stance with Russia as well. So who would they nuke? And if they nuke, would they end the problem or bring their end closer? They would bring their end closer. Because if their enemies have any sort of restrictions, they wouldn't have any restrictions after a nuclear attack. Iran is still calculating. And many people are begging, they're praying for Israel to attack Iran, but not for the bad reasons, for the good reasons. So that Iran can be completely loose from any sort of calculations and once and for all destroy this genocidal regime. So they want an excuse. And nukes won't necessarily be used. And I'll tell you one thing, to a very large extent, it depends on the United States. And I believe that the United States, it already has a plan for the day after Israel. So when Israel ends, not if, when Israel ends as a genocidal entity, as an apartheid genocidal entity, and by the way, that doesn't mean they need to be completely wiped off with a nuclear bomb or a genocide happening against them. Because everyone knows by now, Israel is the one committing a genocide and the resistance is the one targeting the military. They tried to flip things around on the 7th of October to cover up the fact that Hamas took down the Gaza division in an unprecedented attack. Any infantry group that is non-related to a government military body officially has done in history. And they massacred their own people, and then they blamed it on Hamas and released the propaganda, and the garbage mainstream media started publishing everything. Some of them had to take it back and realize and recognize that they were lying, but the damage was done. Everything was plastered on mainstream media. And generally, with many people, all it takes for them is to read the headline. They don't look through stuff and start listening and reading thoroughly and analyzing. Most people are, they'll look at the headlines, oh my God, then they believe it and go and figure afterwards. Oh no, that doesn't work. So they did the damage with whoever they wanted to do the damage with. Israel, of course, didn't do themselves a favor by continuing, but they continued to do everyone a favor. Thank you so much, Israel, for revealing who you are. You're doing the work for us. So the United States is preparing for the scenario when Israel ends that would exclude the use of nuclear weapons. Because they know that if Israel uses nuclear weapons, nukes could be used against Israel and against the United States itself. Don't think like the United States is sitting there safe from everything. No, their enemies have ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads that can destroy large chunks of the United States. But they're still behaving in an arrogant and ignorant way when it comes to the world. And that's also bringing them down. And I hope that also elaborates on this question, means basically Israel reaches its goals or bring humanity to an end. That's a risk. There's a risk of bringing humanity to an end because of this country. And they're trying to cover that up as much as possible by hailing what these terrorists do. Pager attacks, mass-produced consumer goods being exploded all across, killing civilians, the genocide and infanticide, and all of these barbaric crimes. And still you have some countries legitimizing it and supporting it and say, good, no, and you need to do more. And that's the way out of the dilemma. The way out of the dilemma is to continue from a resistance front against Israel. It will continue, not that it needs to continue, it will be continuing. And a more quick way to deal with it, by the way, the quickest way to deal with it is if once and for all, the United States just has a quick review of the situation and realize that this country has done nothing but harm to everyone in the region and to us as a country. Because don't forget, the United States image is tarnished now across the world, and every country that supports Israel, they're viewed as abhorrent as Israel, by the way. Don't forget that. So if they come and they review, and we have a shift with some European countries who are being more vocal than ever in history. I mean, if you rewind a year back, even at the beginning of Israel's massacres, that was unimaginable for certain countries. Macron, he was calling for a global coalition in support of Israel and fighting terror. Now he's calling for an embargo on Israel. And again, it doesn't make him good. He's still Macron, right? But the shift with a country at the level of France or Italy, Canada before having an embargo, the UK with, a humble 30 licenses, but we're still supporting you. We created you, we'll support you until you are wiped out. But see, these things are changing. And that could be the quickest way out, by the United States completely lifting the support of Israel. The official Proda, thank you for your super. He said, Salam Mahmoud, do you expect that Italy's recent actions will potentially inspire other Western nations to move in the same direction in terms of their actions or rhetoric? This is exactly what we're talking about. Italy, France, some other countries too. The UK's limited ban of certain exports, although it's nowhere near enough, by the way. But it's a shift. And it's a shift led by what? It's a shift led by primarily the persistence of the Palestinian people, the resistance fronts in general. So the fact that Israel is still unable to reach its objectives. If they were seeing Israel as almost there, they wouldn't have said anything. Okay, they'll be back in power, they'll kill everyone, we'll continue getting ahead and doing business as usual. All of these moves are showing that the West is slowly realizing that Israel is ending, and they want to protect themselves in the day after. They don't want to be viewed in history as countries who are supporting Israel. Like when you look back at history in 20, 30 years, who was supporting this entity? Oh, the US was supporting, the UK was supporting, France, Italy, or Holland, Germany, whatever it is. But now they want to protect themselves, and they also want to protect themselves legally. If or when some of these countries have any regard to international law. And that is good progress, but that's not enough. And that's not to say that they necessarily have good intentions for the Palestinian people. Beware. No, they're trying to protect themselves primarily. However, it's good because it will eventually continue to support the Palestinian people in general and lift the support of Israel. And like I said, what needs to be done in general from all countries who still support or deal with Israel is to strip them from any legitimacy, blockade, embargo, and if necessary, because if they lift their support, Israel is done. But if lifting their support will still make Israel survive for a very long time, participate in a military action against Israel. Cray, what do you think happens to the hostages left in Gaza? Well, the Israeli prisoners of war in Gaza have been neglected by Israel from day one. Israel had no regard for them. Israel had no regard for the Israelis before they had no regard for the Palestinians on the 7th of October. Firstly, when Hamas carried out this operation and they took down the Gaza division, it was Israel who sold its own population. Where was this division? Why did they not listen to the warnings? Why did they ignore certain warnings from before? So what happened? Hamas destroyed the Gaza division and they went to liberate Palestinian occupied territories. What led them there? Israel, on the day when they knew that Hamas invaded, they started bombing every single place where they suspect a Hamas fighter or group of fighters are in. And you remember the tanks in the Israeli kibbutzes in Be'eri roaming around, shooting. The Israelis confirming we were hit by Israeli tanks. Most of the people were killed due to fire coming from the IDF because they were attacking us. Then you had the massacres from the helicopter on the Nova Festival and on any vehicle going back to Gaza, as confirmed by an IDF pilot to the residents of Nir Oz. That was approximately 5 months ago, saying that we received orders to target any vehicle going back to Gaza, meaning they were targeting every Israeli going back to Gaza. Then after that, areas in Gaza where they suspected Israelis are held, then later to be confirmed by Israelis who were released from Gaza. The first one was Yocheved Lifshitz, confirming they were targeted 3 times on the way. What does that tell you? Israel is deliberately trying to kill them. The Hannibal Directive implemented on them, on the population, and on their troops. So that gave you an indication of how Israel is viewing its own citizens from day one. Because think about it, if Israel cared for the Israelis, how can they go and carpet bomb where they could be? And in many cases, Israelis were in buildings, not in tunnels. Why? Because the resistance was generous enough to give them some free time outside and, food and for them to see the sun. Don't forget that. And then they wanted to have these rescue operations, right? Again, supported by the US and the UK. They went and committed this massacre to release 4 Israelis, during which 3 Israelis were killed. In the process, murdering 240 Palestinians. One of them who was released, Noah Argamani, said, I was hurt. I had bruises all across of my body because of the IDF strike on the building that I was in. Israel tried to spin it, and then she went out on a post on Instagram saying, I'm not going to be a victim for the media. I was hurt all across of my body because of the IDF bombings, not the Hamas. So they gave up. And the people who don't understand how Israel is operating now will not understand where things are going. Before, Israel used to have some regard for Israeli life, particularly before the Netanyahu era. They used to have prisoner exchange deals to release 4 to 7 Israelis with thousands of Palestinians. One Israeli, Gilad Shalit, for 1,049 Palestinians, including Sinwar. Now that's not the case. Now they have sealed the fate of the Israelis in Gaza. Do you know why? Because they do not care about the lives of the Israelis. They are nothing but a colonialist project using the Jews as a front to implement a mass-scale neo-colonialist project that is there to feed the greedy people profiteering from what's happening. And Delphio, thank you. SA, alaikum assalam. Any trusty news about Ismail Qaani? And thanks for all your work, Mahmoud. Thank you. And my pleasure. Yes, we have seen him in Iran. He appeared. And then that debunked the whole narrative. He was seen in the funeral of Abbas Nil Furushan, who was assassinated with the late martyr Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon. Because some people said, oh, he was killed in Lebanon, he sold off Nasrallah, he did this, he did that, he was a Mossad asset. You know, the Iranophobe propaganda, the typical garbage that is published in so many places. But yes, he's still here. And Khalid, thank you so much for that, much appreciated. And Bujar is saying that, Mahmoud, so as far as for Iran's secret of it, could it be something linked with powerful electromagnetic waves or lasers that can roast the country? Well, we heard that they might possess such technology. It would, and he said it wouldn't be a surprise from Iran, its technology. It wouldn't be a surprise, you know. The question is, and Iran has a lot of surprises. Hezbollah still have surprises too. And the others still have surprises. The question is, when would be the suitable time for them to use it? Because part of war is keeping secrets and surprising your enemy. So if they have something that they haven't necessarily used before, and it reaches a level of threat that is very high, we can then start seeing certain things that we haven't seen before. Although the things that we're seeing so far are enough to finish Israel as a state. Like what? Imagine Iran continued with those hypersonic missiles on the 1st of October. And they landed them on every base in Israel, every power plant, all their refineries, their chemical factories, infrastructure, airports. What would have happened? Only with those. Vivet, Mahmoud, is it true that Israelis have gone inches into Lebanon? Yes, they're going inches into Lebanon, taking pictures and then being neutralized by the resistance. So they pay a really heavy price in taking pictures in Lebanon by going back in coffins to Israel. Abu Yusuf, thank you so much for your super, much appreciated. He said, Mahmoud, inshallah, soon you will reach 100,000 subscribers. Thank you with your support. Thank you. Inshallah. As a plan B, do you have any live streaming in Rumble as well? I already have an account set up in Rumble. I upload sometimes to Rumble. So immediately, if again, there's no problems. I love YouTube. And I plan to continue on YouTube, and I like it as a platform. But if something happens, you of course have to be prepared, and there are preparations in Rumble, and not just in Rumble. And I suggest anyone who follows me to go and subscribe to my Rumble, by the way, although I upload less frequently than here. But I also have plans following Rumble. That again, if necessary, they will be revealed in due course. But thank you so much for that. That was from Abu Yusuf. Thank you very much for that. Let's take a couple of more questions before we wrap up. And Shiva Mohan, 1989, thank you very much for that. And thank you, by the way, everyone, for your participation and kind comments as well. Jimmy Eyes is saying, Israel is not part of my US. They are a reject around here. I know that many American people, if not the majority, do not like Israel, and likewise with the European populations. But the question is this will or view represented by the decision makers? No. And if not, what's being done to change that view so it could be implemented? Or is that not significant enough because it's something abroad, or some people think it's not going to come and bite their own populations? These are serious questions. So, although there is massive popular rejection, mass protests and activism against Israel, we still have the people in power who support and legitimize the genocide. That's the reality. And at the end of the day, if those people are in power or will be back in power, then the people who are acting and voting have no one to blame but themselves. If, again, so that we can be very, on point here, if they have any care or knowledge about what's happening in that part of the world. But I am sure that many, if not the majority of Americans, have the same view, including against their own government. Jack, hello, brother Mahmoud. Just because they killed and eliminated Sinwar, they must know the Palestinian people have 1,000 Sinwar. We don't give up. We don't give in. Yeah, that's if, of course. We still need a confirmation from Hamas. And yeah, not even 1,000. Way more. Again, what did Israel create now after all of that they've done so far? They have globalized the love for resistance. People like Yahya Sinwar are viewed as heroes in the West. Do you understand what Israel has done? People are looking through everything. So it's not just about the Palestinians, by the way. And they're realizing that these people fighting Israel, standing up against Israel, are doing so because of the continued oppression that they've been facing that has been hidden from the global population. And that's a massive defeat for Israel. Lydia, Mahmoud, even if Israel does lose, will the USA twist things and say it won? May just say they withdraw. What do you think? Well, I think the United States, of course, typical, a lying establishment. I mean, they withdrew from Afghanistan humiliated, and they tried to make it out as if it's nothing. They lost the war with Taliban. Taliban defeated them, humiliated them, and expelled them from Afghanistan and went back to power the next day. And they don't have sanctions against Taliban, and Taliban are not considered to be a terrorist organization anymore. They blew the living daylight out of the United States and their coalition in Afghanistan, and all of the lives of those who went and fought with the United States and the coalition in Afghanistan went for nothing but supporting the countries, the powers benefiting from the war. So of course they're going to have to kind of cover it up. They're not going to tell their people, oh no, we took your sons to die for our greedy politicians and, military industrial complex. They're not going to say that, are they? Let alone the drug dealers, and, we're not going to dig in further. So they have the capacity to deny things or not talk about them, to pretend that they don't exist. But the defeat of Israel will be very, very visible. It will be undeniable. But if the United States does not change its view towards the region after Israel collapses, the people of the region will still have a continued problem with the United States administration. And like I said, they probably have a plan for the day after Israel. And ZUK, thank you so much for your super. Let's see if I missed a couple of you here. And Alan Marwin as well. Thank you so much. Much appreciated, guys. I'm just opening the two chats to make sure we reach all of them. Okay, we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much again for tuning in for another live stream. Thank you for everyone who sent supers. Much appreciated. I'll hopefully be with you. I might come up with a video after this as well. And we'll hopefully be with you tomorrow too. In the meantime, I hope I added some beneficial information for you and shed a bit of light as to what's happening. Thank you again for all of your support, and thank you for everyone who participated in the chat and for your wonderful and kind comments and very much valued input. Again, apologies if I haven't reached all of them, but I really do appreciate them very much. Alan Marwin, ZUK, Shiva Mohan, Abu Yusuf, Khaled, Razak, Delphio, Bako, the official Proda, Elvira, Angela, Kevin, the virus, and Sour Vodka. Thank you very much for your supers. Much appreciated. Thank you for your continued support. Stay blessed, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening or day or night, depending on where you are. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone.